She was 84 years old. She had lived in the same house for 50 years. She went to church every Sunday. She laughed about wild animals eating her garden. She kept her medication on the kitchen counter every single morning, so she would never forget to take it. And then one night, a Saturday night, she was gone. Not wandered off. Not confused. Not lost in the neighborhood. Gone. As in, someone came to her front door in the middle of the night, armed, wearing a ski mask, and took her. But here is where this story stops being just a missing person case, and becomes something much darker. The investigators who showed up to her house the next day. They did not call search and rescue first. They called homicide. And that is not even the part that should scare you. The part that should scare you is what they found on that front porch. And what they found inside the house, sitting right there in plain sight, that whoever took her chose to leave behind. Stay with me, because by the time we get to the end of this story, you are going to understand why the people closest to this investigation are not sleeping at night. Before we get into what happened that night, you need to understand something. Every single news outlet in the country has been calling her Savannah Guthrie's mother. And yes, that is true. Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most recognized faces on American television. That is her daughter. But Nancy Guthrie was not just somebody's mother. She was a whole person. A whole life. And the reason that matters is because it may be exactly why she was targeted. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky, a small river town right across the Ohio from Cincinnati. In the early 1970s, she and her husband Charles packed up and moved out to Arizona. And the moment they saw the desert, they fell in love with it. In 1975, they bought a single-story brick home in the Catalina foothills, just north of Tucson. 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, a pool in the back, desert stretching out in every direction. They paid $85,000 for it. That house became everything. Nancy and Charles raised 3 children inside those walls. Annie, who became a poet and an artist. Cameron, their son. And Savannah, the youngest, who would grow up to become one of the most famous journalists in America. But in 1988, Charles Guthrie died. He was only 49 years old. He was on a mining exploration trip in Mexico. Savannah was 16 years old. And Nancy, instead of leaving, instead of selling the house and starting over somewhere else, she stayed. She raised her children through that grief. In that same house. On that same desert land. And for the next 38 years, that brick home was her anchor. The one place in the world where she felt completely, totally safe. She was active at St. Andrew's Church. She kept close friendships through her congregation. She adapted when the pandemic hit and started watching virtual church with a friend every Sunday. Just like clockwork. Every single week. And no matter how far Savannah's career took her, from Montana to Missouri to Washington, D.C. to New York City, she always came back. The sisters had a pact. An unspoken one. On weekends, at least one of them would stay home, even as college girls, so their mother would never be alone. Savannah described it herself once in an interview. That was just something we did together as sisters. 3 months before Nancy disappeared, Savannah brought a Today Show camera crew to Tucson. She took her mother to lunch at El Charro, a local restaurant downtown. Nancy was 84 years old, sharp as ever, smiling, talking about the desert like it was the greatest gift she had ever been given. Just the air, she said. The quality of life is laid back and gentle. She laughed about the javelinas, those wild pig-like animals, eating her plants. She was happy. She was home. She was safe. Or so everyone thought. Here is what we know about January 31st, 2026. And I need you to pay close attention to the timeline, because there is a gap inside it that investigators have not been able to explain. That Saturday evening, Nancy spent time with her family. Dinner, card games, an ordinary evening in an ordinary home. The kind of night this family had shared hundreds of times before. At approximately 9:45 that evening, Nancy's son-in-law drove her home. He dropped her off at the front door. She went inside. The door closed. That was the last time anyone in her family saw Nancy Guthrie. For roughly 4 hours, nothing. No alerts. No disturbance. Nancy presumably followed her normal evening routine and went to bed in the home she had slept in for 50 years. Then, 1:47 in the morning, her Nest doorbell camera disconnected. Not from a power outage. Not from a software glitch. Someone physically tampered with the device. They went right up to her front door and disabled it. They wanted to make sure that whatever happened next would never be recorded. And they almost succeeded. But here is what that person apparently did not know. The camera's back-end systems kept collecting data, even after the physical device was knocked out. And later, the FBI would recover images and footage from those back-end systems that the intruder never intended to exist. Hold on to that. It becomes critical. At 2:12 in the morning, 25 minutes after the camera went dark, the system detected motion. Someone was there, on that property. But because the video feed had been cut, there is no footage. Just a digital record of a presence. Something the system registered, but could not show. Then at 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker application disconnected from her phone. Now let me explain exactly why that matters. A pacemaker app maintains a constant connection to the patient's phone. It monitors cardiac activity. It transmits data. For that connection to break, either the phone was destroyed, or it was moved out of range, or the pacemaker itself stopped transmitting. Every single one of those explanations means the same thing. Something happened to Nancy Guthrie at 2:28 in the morning. And between 1:47 and 2:28, someone was inside or around her home for 41 minutes. Now I want you to hold that number, because 41 minutes tells you something. Law enforcement professionals will tell you that an experienced burglar is in and out in under 5 minutes. Entry, target, exit. 10 minutes means you are either inexperienced or you know exactly what you are looking for. 20 minutes, and the nature of the crime starts to shift. It stops being about property. 41 minutes is not a burglary. 41 minutes inside someone's home means you are not afraid of getting caught. It means you know the layout. You know where the cameras are. You know the schedule of the neighborhood. You know when the family is not going to check in. Or it means you simply do not care. Either way, when Sheriff Chris Nanos of the Pima County Sheriff's Department saw that timeline, he made a decision that shocked everyone watching. He called homicide investigators. Not search and rescue. Not the missing persons unit. Homicide. When reporters pushed him on that decision, his answer was careful, but unmistakable. There is something that is not right here. 6 words. A sitting sheriff. On the record. Sheriffs do not say that in public unless they mean every single syllable. When deputies arrived at Nancy's home on the afternoon of February 1st, they found what the family had already discovered. Nancy was gone. But the things she would never leave without were still there. Her phone was in the house. Her wallet was in the house. And her daily medication was sitting on the kitchen counter. I need you to stop here, because this detail does not get the attention it deserves. Nancy Guthrie had a pacemaker. She had high blood pressure. She had heart conditions that required daily pharmaceutical management. Sheriff Nanos confirmed publicly, these were not optional. These were medications that kept her body stable. Missing a single day could trigger a serious medical episode. Missing multiple days could become life-threatening. The medication was on the counter, in plain sight, right where she kept it every single morning. Whoever spent 41 minutes inside that home would have seen it. They left it. Now think about that, in the context of a kidnapping for ransom. If you take someone with the intention of holding them until their family pays, you need that person alive. A dead hostage cannot be exchanged for money. A critically ill hostage creates a crisis you cannot manage. Taking the victim's medication is not complicated. It is the most obvious thing you do if you want any chance of success. It was right there. 5 seconds. That is all it would have taken. So either the person who took Nancy did not understand that she needed it, which seems almost impossible given how long they were inside her home, or they understood and did not care whether she survived long enough for a ransom to be collected. Both of those possibilities troubled investigators deeply. Neither one supported the idea that this was a clean, professional kidnapping for money. And then there was the blood. Nancy Guthrie's blood was found on the front porch. Media outlets that filmed the scene reported what appeared to be a trail near the front door. Signs of forced entry at the residence. Officials declined to describe how much blood, but the forensic picture was clear enough for the sheriff to make the call he made. Doorbell camera, disabled. Personal belongings, untouched. Life-saving medication, abandoned. Blood on the porch. And Nancy Guthrie, gone. For 9 days, the public had nothing. Investigators were working. The family was pleading. The entire country was watching. But there were no images, no description, no lead that the public could act on. Then on February 10th, the FBI released the photographs. And everything changed. FBI Director Kash Patel posted 4 black and white images pulled from the back-end systems of Nancy's doorbell camera. The same camera someone had tried to destroy. The same system that kept recording even after it was supposed to be dead. The images showed a figure standing on Nancy Guthrie's front porch. Ski mask covering the entire face. Long pants. Jacket. Gloves. A black backpack on his back. And a handgun in a holster, positioned at the front of his body. Armed. Masked. At her door. At 2 a.m, the FBI described the suspect as male. Approximately 5'9" to 5'10". Average build. The backpack was identified as a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. And here is a detail that stopped investigators cold. The Ozark Trail brand is sold exclusively at Walmart. Investigators immediately began pulling surveillance footage from Walmart locations across the Tucson area. Later reports confirmed the suspect's clothing may have also been purchased there. This was not someone operating with sophisticated resources. This was not a trained professional with a supply chain. This was someone who walked into a Walmart, bought a backpack, and used it to kidnap an 84-year-old woman. A retired FBI special agent who reviewed the footage was direct about what he saw. The suspect's gun handling, the way the weapon was positioned, the way the person moved, none of it suggested training. None of it suggested experience. The assessment was blunt. This appeared to be someone who had acquired a weapon and a plan, but lacked the skill to execute either one professionally. Within days, the FBI reported receiving more than 13,000 tips. The Pima County Sheriff's Department was fielding thousands more. That number would eventually surpass 30,000. 30,000 people calling in. And still, no arrest. No name. No Nancy. On February 2nd, the day after Nancy was reported missing, a Tucson TV station received a ransom letter. TMZ received a similar one around the same time. The notes demanded payment in Bitcoin for Nancy's safe return. $6 million. They set 2 deadlines. February 5th and February 9th, both with threats against Nancy's life if payment was not made. A Bitcoin wallet address was included. It was real, functional, on the blockchain. On the surface, this looked straightforward. Someone took her, someone wants money, someone is going to give her back when they get paid. But investigators with actual kidnapping experience started looking at the details. And the details did not hold up. A retired FBI agent examined the language of the notes and noticed something immediately. The notes used the term USD when referring to American dollars. That is not how Americans write. Americans say dollars. Americans use a dollar sign. USD is how you write it in international financial documents, or when English is not your first language. Small detail. But in kidnapping investigations, the language of ransom communications is often exactly where the truth hides. Then came the deadlines. February 5th arrived. The deadline passed. Silence. February 9th arrived. The second deadline passed. Silence. No follow-up. No renegotiation. No proof of life. No consequence for missing either deadline. Nothing. Here is why that matters. Legitimate kidnapping for ransom operations run on communication. That is the entire mechanism. Captors stay in contact because it keeps pressure on the family. They provide proof of life because it motivates payment. They enforce deadlines because urgency is how they control the situation. They renegotiate when needed because the goal is collecting money, and flexibility serves that goal. None of that happened here. 2 deadlines. 0 consequences. 0 proof that Nancy was alive. 0 direct communication with the family. The ransom framework looked less like a functional criminal operation and more like a story someone constructed to point investigators in the wrong direction. And then it got even stranger. On February 11th, TMZ received a new message. This one was not from someone claiming to be the kidnapper. This one was from someone claiming to know who the kidnapper was. The sender wanted 1 Bitcoin, roughly $66,000, in exchange for a name. If they want the name of the individual involved, the note read, then I want 1 Bitcoin. Time is more than relevant. Over the next several days, the same person sent 2 more messages. They raised their demand to $100,000. They complained about not being taken seriously. They referenced the FedEx driver who had already been detained and released by investigators. And they said they needed the money so they could lay low after coming forward. Then came the phrase that made investigators sit up straight. The sender referred to the person responsible as the main individual, not the kidnapper, not the person who took her. The main individual. The implication was clear. There was more than one person involved. TMZ's own executive producer noted something else. The writing style across all 4 communications, the original ransom note, and the 3 follow-up emails, appeared to come from the same person. The FBI did not deposit any money. Whether they believed it was a fraud or were pursuing the sender through other means, that has not been made public. But here is what we know for certain. A California man named Derek Kelly, 42 years old, was arrested and charged with sending fake ransom demands to members of the Guthrie family. He had allegedly sent 2 text messages on February 4th, posing as Nancy's abductor and demanding money. 1 fraud confirmed. 2 deadlines missed. No proof of life. No direct contact. The ransom notes were supposed to explain what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Instead, they made everything more confusing. In the middle of all the dead ends, in the middle of all the noise, investigators found something. Over the course of the search, approximately 16 gloves were recovered from various locations around Nancy's home and the surrounding desert. Most of them were searchers' gloves, discarded by the hundreds of law enforcement personnel and volunteers who had been combing those desert hills since February 1st. But one glove was not like the others. It was found in a field near the side of a road, approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. It did not match the searchers' gloves. The FBI stated that it appeared to visually match the gloves worn by the masked individual captured on Nancy's doorbell camera footage. And that glove contained DNA. The profile was from an unknown male. Investigators sent the glove to a private laboratory in Florida on Thursday, February 13th. It arrived the next day. Preliminary results came back that Saturday, and investigators were waiting on quality control confirmation before entering the unknown male profile into the national DNA database known as CODIS. CODIS contains more than 19 million offender profiles. It has assisted in more than 758,000 investigations. It is one of the most powerful crime-solving tools in existence. Familial DNA searches through this same system were a critical part of identifying the suspect in the Idaho College murders. If that profile matches anyone in the database, investigators would have a name. The location of the glove also mattered. 2 miles from Nancy's home, on the side of a road. That suggests a possible route of travel taken by the suspect after leaving the property. If the glove was dropped while fleeing, it tells investigators the direction they went, how they may have gotten out, where to focus the search next. Sheriff Nanos also revealed that investigators had already taken cheek swabs from multiple individuals questioned during the investigation, meaning they had DNA to compare against before the national database even came back with results. Separately, a signal sniffer was mounted on a helicopter, actively scanning the area for signals from Nancy's pacemaker as the aircraft flew over the desert. A former FBI agent explained that pacemakers emit very short-range alerts, meaning the helicopter would need to fly extremely close to wherever Nancy might be in order to detect anything. It is a desperate measure, but it reflects a team that is willing to try everything. As of right now, the DNA results have not been publicly announced. That result could change the entire direction of this case, or it could be another dead end. But that glove, in that field, 2 miles from an empty house, is the most promising piece of physical evidence in this entire investigation. I want to lay out the questions this case is raising. Not theories. Not speculation. Questions that come directly from the evidence that investigators have made public. Who spent 41 minutes inside Nancy Guthrie's home, and why? That amount of time suggests either deep familiarity with the property or a complete disregard for being caught. Neither one is consistent with a stranger targeting a house they have never been inside before. How did the intruder know how to disable the doorbell camera? They tampered with the physical device. They knew where it was. They knew it needed to be shut down. That kind of knowledge comes from somewhere. Previous visits as a service worker, a contractor, a neighbor, someone who had been in that house before, or from surveillance conducted over time. You do not figure that out at 1:47 in the morning on your very first visit. Why was the medication left behind? If the goal was ransom, keeping the victim alive is the entire point. The medication was right there. It would have taken 5 seconds. Leaving it behind is either catastrophic incompetence or a signal that long-term survival was never part of the plan. Why did the ransom operation completely fall apart? 2 deadlines. No consequences. No proof of life. No direct communication. That is not how kidnapping for money works. That is not even close to how it works. Why did this happen on the exact weekend Savannah was scheduled to fly internationally? Savannah had been assigned to co-host NBC's coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics opening ceremonies in Milan, Italy. Those assignments are set weeks, sometimes months in advance. Someone who knew about that commitment would also know that Nancy's primary support system was about to be thousands of miles away and very difficult to mobilize quickly. That timing may be coincidental, but in this investigation, coincidences have a way of being something else entirely. And why did Sheriff Nanos call homicide before a body was found? That decision was public. It was deliberate. It meant he was seeing evidence at that scene that pointed toward outcomes far more severe than a standard missing person case. He has not publicly specified what that evidence was, but his 6 words told us everything we needed to hear. There is something that is not right here. Through all of it, Savannah Guthrie has not stopped. The moment she learned her mother was missing, she canceled her Olympic assignment. She got on a plane. She flew to Tucson and has been there ever since. Working alongside investigators, releasing statements, and keeping her mother's face in front of the world. An NBC producer who knows her personally described the phone call Savannah received about her mother's disappearance as the worst phone call of her life. On February 4th, Savannah stood in front of a camera alongside her sister Annie and her brother Cameron. She looked directly into the lens and spoke to whoever had their mother. "We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." On February 7th, 1 week after Nancy vanished, her brother Cameron stood up and said what the family needed the world to hear. "Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We have not heard anything directly." On February 15th, 2 full weeks after Nancy was taken, Savannah posted again, "We still have hope. We still believe." And then she spoke directly to whoever has her mother. It is never too late to do the right thing. You are not lost or alone. Yellow flowers started appearing at the end of Nancy's driveway within days of her disappearance. They grew into a full tribute. Candles, handwritten notes, small tokens from strangers across the country. A sheriff's deputy remained stationed in the driveway around the clock. At KVOA, the Tucson NBC affiliate where Savannah started her career decades ago, a 4-foot banner was hung outside the building. It read simply, "Bring her home." People from across the country signed it. Here is what I keep coming back to. 50 years. Nancy Guthrie lived in that house for 50 years. She raised 3 children inside those walls. She buried her husband's memory there. She watched the javelinas eat her plants and laughed about it. She went to church on Sundays. She kept her medication on the counter. She called the desert air gentle. And sometime between 1:47 and 2:28 on a Saturday night in January, someone walked up to her front door, armed, masked, and took all of that away. They spent 41 minutes inside her home. They left her medication on the counter. They disabled her camera. They sent ransom notes that collapsed under the weight of their own inconsistencies. And then they disappeared into the same desert darkness that Nancy had loved about her neighborhood for half a century. As of right now, no one knows where Nancy Guthrie is. No one knows if she is alive. No one has been arrested. And the only physical evidence that might identify the person responsible is the DNA on a single glove found in a field 2 miles from her empty house. But 30,000 people have called in. Hundreds of investigators are working around the clock. The FBI's most advanced forensic tools are fully deployed. And a family that already survived the worst kind of loss is refusing to give up on the woman who held them together through all of it. If someone out there knows what happened to Nancy Guthrie, someone knows who walked up to that porch, someone knows where she is right now, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff's Department can be reached at 520-351-4900. There is a $100,000 reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery or the arrest of anyone involved. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She needs her medication every single day. Her family wants her home. And this story is not over.